This is a reenactment of a true story of a young woman from the Ukraine who thought she was getting a job as a waitress.
Of hot, dry air as I emerged from the aircraft at Kiryos International Airport. When I was at the jammed arrival with my one piece of luggage in my hand, I was met by a burly Russian. Crammed in the back with 3 other women, 2 from Moldova and 1 from a Russian, all in their late teens. And weeks earlier, a woman at a recruitment center in my hometown of Ukraine had spoken excitedly of a job she had arranged for me as a waitress. I had heard of young women being lured away by jobs that didn't exist, only to be forced into prostitution, but I didn't think that could happen to me. I was a perfect dope. I was desperate for work, and my mother was sick. My dad was a drunk, and my 2 younger sisters were wasting away. My job was the only chance to make things better. I was flown to Kiev to Vienna, then I would switch planes to Cyprus, and I would board another plane for Cairo. Once in Egypt, I was driven overland to Tel Aviv. The driver got back into his Jeep and drove off in a cloud of dust, leaving me and the other women I was with in the custody of some guides. The girls watched and wondered as the men mounted their camels. The tiny caravan set out across the Sinai Desert, scurrying behind the camels on foot. It was so hot and we were so thirsty, but the Arab men kept taking us to the desert and did not care. They kept shouting at us. I have no idea what they were saying. They just yelled. They walked for almost 2 days, stopping only twice for meals of pita bread, dried figs, and dates, and 1 cup of water. And once, we slept on canvas tarps under the stars. They tied their camels to the stump and motioned us, women, to pick their way over the wire fence. I didn't know at the time, but we had just reached the Egyptian-Israeli frontier. Then we continued on foot. That night, I was totally spent and dehydrated, and us women collapsed under the open sky near the outskirts of the village. One of the guides continued alone, returning a short while later in a short white pickup truck with 2 other men. The driver spoke fluent Russian, and he ordered us women to the back. We weren't offered any food or water, and they didn't allow us to wash or talk, and we slept on the dirt floor. And then the next afternoon, 2 thuggish men showed up and ordered us to disrobe. We were told to take off our clothes and they would look at us. I was so humiliated. He drove us to an apartment near the sea. 2 were Ukrainian and another from Moldova. We were instructed to take a shower, and we were drying. He told us to put cheap lingerie. We women were herded into the living room, where our owner announced that he had purchased us for $10,000 each, and we were his property until we paid off a $20,000 debt. He told us we would have to start working off the debt every single evening servicing clients. He also warned us that if we refused to do it, we would deal with pain. That night, for the first time, I have felt so sad. I had serviced 8 men. It was so terrible and ashamed. I showered after each encounter, but I could not wash away the filth in me. Over the next 4 months, I don't know how many hundreds of men I was forced to have sex with. Young men, old men, fat, disgusting, soldiers, husbands, and religious men. It did not matter if I was sick. I had to work or I would be punished. I pleaded with several clients and the ones who looked sympathetic. I asked to use their cell phones to call my mother just to tell her I was alive. They all refused. I thought of my poor mother and my sisters. While servicing some of my clients, I found one thing particularly puzzling. They didn't distinguish us. We were all just Natashas, or all just Russian. They just called us what they wanted to. We were just anyone to them. And I just became this other person because I was never called by my name, and it was such a nightmare.
This is a reenactment of a 15-year-old girl from Phoenix, Arizona.
I got a call from my friend Bianca, who asked to stop by my house. I was wearing a pair of my SpongeBob pajamas. I went outside to the driveway to go give her a hug. I was immediately pushed into the car, where I was met with two men. They told Bianca if she didn't tie me up, they would shoot her. She tied up my hands first and put the tape over my mouth and then tape over my eyes. While she was putting tape on me, Matthew, one of the men, told me if I screamed or acted stupid, he'd shoot me, so I just stayed quiet. I was taken to an apartment 25 miles away from my home. One of my captors put a gun to my head. He said, "If I was to shoot you right now, where would you want to be shot? In your head, in your back, in your chest?" And then I heard him starting to mess with his gun. He counted to 3 and then he pulled the trigger. And then I was still alive. I opened my eyes and I just saw him laughing. I was then drugged by my captors, and other men were brought into the room. There was a middle-aged guy in the living room who wanted to take advantage of a 15-year-old. It was really scary. Kept in a small dog crate for several days. They had to put an ad on Craigslist. After that ad ran, men began arriving at the apartment at all hours of day and night. I was earning hundreds of dollars a night. All of it was going to the pimp. For more than 40 days, I was captive, often beaten and forced daily to have sex. Pimps told me they would go after my family, and they even threatened to throw battery acid on my 19th-old niece. November 8th, police broke down the doors of the apartment. I was tied up and crushed into a drawer under a bed. I was laying down, stiff as a board, shaking. And then he opens the middle drawer, and the police officer couldn't believe it. He said, "Oh my God." I was taken to a safe house for children while they called my mother. People accused of snatching me were charged with kidnapping and sexual assault. They all pleaded non-guilty, except for one who awaits extradition from Illinois.